I do want to point out, just yesterday, the Harris campaign tweeted out a soundbite from him from 2018 where he seems to be suggesting he was, quote, in war. In war. Take a listen to this.
Hope woke up like many of you did 5 weeks ago and said, Dad, you're the only person I know who's in elected office. You need to stop what's happening with this. I'll take my kick in the butt for the NRA. I spent 25 years in the Army and I hunt. And I gave the money back, and I'll tell you what I have been doing. I've been voting for common sense legislation that protects the Second Amendment, but we can do background checks. We can do CDC research. We can make sure we don't have reciprocal carry among states, and we can make sure that those weapons of war that I carried in war is the only place where those weapons are at.
Now, Tom, he did go to Italy in 2003. Afghanistan was underway at that time, not yet Iraq. Memory serves. I'm trying to remember the exact date. But he was in Italy. So could that arguably be, quote, in war?
Well, maybe it felt like war to him. I guess it's not technically war. That's not a combat zone. You're not getting combat pay in there. And you are not in war. That is just absolutely just another Tim Walz lie out there. And the people listening to it probably believe it because they don't know any better. I mean, he had it out there that he was in Italy and supporting troops that went to Afghanistan or some BS story. And yeah, I think I guess I'm pretty sure Iraq was, starting and going on at that time to a certain point.
It started in 2003. I just don't know when, in 2003.
We were there. Cause I'm pretty sure when we were there, we got the notification that Saddam had been captured, cause he was on, they were hunting him basically from, whatever time. And I'm pretty confident it was like December of 2003 when they caught him. And I know everybody was elated, that we finally caught that dirty dictator that had done horrible things to his people and his country for years and years, and maybe things would finally change. That was, that is just amazing. I can't believe you'd think a lightning bolt would have struck him right there.
Well, can you help us understand why that's such a big deal, right? Because I think there might be some people at home saying like, in war, he was kind of war adjacent. He was in Italy helping support the guys who were, quote, in war. Is it a big deal to say you were in war when you weren't actually in combat?
It's a huge deal for veterans, and it should be a huge deal for the general public out there because basically it's proof that you're a liar. And if you're just lying for political gain or you're lying just because you think that's what the people you're talking to want to hear, that's not good as a leader of a country. I mean, to me, that's just it's undescribable how somebody can do that. As far as the soldiers out there, there's an awful lot of them that, I mean, before 2000, I had never been to war. I've been overseas training here and there. We were in the Cold War, which technically was a war. We didn't fire a shot, but we built things up to the point where we broke the Soviet Union without having to be in a hot war with them, which was good. But, for somebody to say they've been in war and they're not, that is, like the saying has been, stolen valor. You're basically out there acting like you're something that you're not. And that's not a good thing. That's bold-faced lying.
I think every soldier knows that. I mean, I just think every soldier knows there's a distinction between being in war and being in a position to support the guys who are actually in the war. And most soldiers would never dream of saying they'd fought in it when they hadn't, though Senator Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut certainly did and was nonetheless elected to senator as a Democrat, notwithstanding. There's another question of stolen valor, which I teased before the break, and that is this position of command sergeant major, which he held for a short time conditionally, as you outlined before. He needed to complete some other things in order to actually have the title, which he didn't. But now, repeatedly since he left, he's referred to himself as a retired command sergeant major, and he's allowed others to introduce him and call him that. Here's just an example.
I'm a retired command sergeant major. I spent 24 years in the Army National Guard.
So when you first came to Washington, you were a retired command sergeant major in the Army National Guard, so you were drawn immediately to...
As a 24-year veteran of the
Shaking his head,
National
yes.
Guard and the Red Bull Division and a retired command sergeant major.
So why do you think that's not true? Why do you have an issue with him doing that?
Because it is not true. He is not a retired command sergeant major. He's a retired master sergeant. When he failed, when he dropped out of the sergeant major's academy, and when he quit, the obligations were not fulfilled for his conditional promotion. So he ended up being reduced to master sergeant. So his retirement, which he's 60 now, which is probably drawing, is E8 master sergeant. He is not a retired command sergeant major. The state of Minnesota even brought it out there. Well, he can't call himself a retired command sergeant major, but he can say he served as, which, technically he was an acting command sergeant major for a few months, and then he didn't fulfill responsibilities and the conditions, and he was reduced. So, they kind of came around and he hawed that, well, yeah, he can say he served as one, but he's right there on video and audio that he says he is a retired command sergeant major, and he's not. That's part of the reason that I brought this whole thing out in 2016, I believe, was when he came down to a memorial here and in Heron Lake, Minnesota, and he spoke, and he did the same thing to them. The public, he was in the first district of Congress, the United House of Representatives, and he basically said that he was a retired command sergeant major. There was a write-up in the paper, and it was in there 6-7 times. And he tooted his horn, how he was the highest ranking, whatever. And one of my neighbors said, well, he knew I had went to Iraq, and he was like, I got to meet a fellow command sergeant major of yours. And I said, he is not one. I said, he didn't fulfill the obligations. And his son-in-law is in the military in South Dakota. And he was like, we don't know that. You need to get this out there. And I'm like, why do I got to do this? I just want to be back here in Southwest Minnesota and live my life, And he's like, well, somebody's got to bring it out there. And I was like, okay, I guess I'm the one chosen then. So I wrote a letter to Mr. Walz, and I basically said, this is a lie. Can you just please correct the record? If somebody calls you a retired command sergeant major, can you please just tell them that is not true and just come clean? I gave him the opportunity. He didn't say a damn word to me. And so I sent it to the other departments in Washington that he was on the committees with. And I told them all, I said, he's not a retired command sergeant major. I'd appreciate it. And everybody else out there that is a actual command sergeant major would appreciate it if he would cease and desist lying to everybody. And, then he started losing in the first district, and he ran for governor. And then, our state, they had the Great Minnesota cover up with him, basically, where they didn't want this to get out too much. So they kind of hid it. But, now that he's on the national stage, I think people they absolutely need to know the truth before he gets in any more powerful position.
How about all those actual command sergeant majors who went through the 2-year training, did their duty, served the country for that additional time, earned the title? Why should he be running around saying he's retired with that rank when he didn't actually earn it? It was a conditional title that he didn't actually earn it out. And now it is stolen valor. I agree with you. You've convinced me. I didn't totally understand it, I confess, before we chatted, Tom, but that's just wrong. I mean, the titles in military service matter. They show that you've been elevated for a reason. You've done some extra work. You've done some extra, things of honor in some cases, but the medals, the titles, they're there for a reason.
They are. And that's part of the reason the stolen valor stuff came out when it did, because you had people out there that were wearing a combat infantry badge or a silver star or a bronze star or a combat action badge, or they had service stripes that showed they were overseas for 2 years. And, and then they came out with it. And I think they actually said that, well, yeah, that's kind of a weird way to have a freedom of speech thing. But, this whole command sergeant major thing is, there's thousands of people that have went through the academy and have served honorably all the way up to the United States Army command sergeant major, the top dog of all of them. And everybody put in their time and their devotion to duty and their loyalty and their integrity and respect for others and their selfless service. And you got this guy out. I mean, I met, a couple E9s and a couple colonels, air base one time when we were just waiting for flight. And then I found out later that their helicopter got shot down, and there were 7 of them on there, and there was a female CSM from Iowa, and they all got killed, and they're buried in Arlington. And it's like, somebody needs to speak for them to keep somebody like this from being able to hang on their coattails and say, yeah, I was a CSM, I was a command sergeant major, we got to stop these weapons of war, I was in war. I mean, what is going on with this guy? I mean, I think he's lived the lie so long he believes it himself.
Tom, we reached out to him to get a reaction to what we anticipated you would be saying. No response. He did give a response back in October 2022 to the Star Tribune and said, quote, "I don't know if Tom just disagrees with my politics or whatever, but my record speaks for itself and my accomplishments in uniform speak for itself." The ability to provide for your family has changed quite a bit in the last couple of years, as you know. When you go shopping, you're getting less, but spending the same. You might have to decide what to buy and what to do without. But I want to tell you about American Financing. If you are a homeowner, they will take the equity you've built up and use it to pay off your high interest debt. They are saving customers an average of $854 a month, and they're closing some people in as fast as 10 days. Start today, and you may be able to delay 2 mortgage payments. Call American Financing to see what they could do for you. The number is 888-528-1219, 888-528-1219, or go to americanfinancing.net/Kelly. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.